if you're not kind of scared out of your mind, and if you don't have that sick pit in your stomach at least a few times a day, I won't even say a week, a few times a day where you're just like, what am I doing? Your goals aren't big enough.
Hi, this is Moby. Welcome to The Fire Show. Hello. Welcome to another episode of The Fire Show. Today, me, Moby, and multiple other nicknames, whichever one you want to call me, I am recording in the newly launched startup studio in Galvanize in downtown Austin as part of a new initiative by Media Tech Ventures. In the studio, I'm joined by Melinda Garvey, entrepreneur, philanthropist, and role model. That is actually the first time I have ever said philanthropist out loud. I'm not kidding. Yep. Anyway, Melinda that is, founded Austin Woman Magazine 14 years ago. Then ATXMan. And now On the Dot, a daily podcast about kickass women all over the planet. Melinda has had huge successes and has served as entrepreneur in residence for McCombs School of Business, has won awards by many publications, business associations, and entrepreneurship collectives. In this episode, I sit down and get the chance to just ask her some simple questions. What makes someone want to do a magazine? Having never created a business before, what's the constant battle for an entrepreneur between doubt and resilience? How does resilience even win in the end? Why is Melinda branching off into podcasts? Is her vision for the advancement of women something she had all her life? Is that kind of a bug that many entrepreneurs have from their childhood? These are all questions that I ponder about myself. So, hey, thanks for listening to the show and giving me the chance to actually ask these questions and bring the answers to you. Lastly, shout out to women entrepreneurs. On my last podcast, I interviewed quite a few, and I think about nuggets from their episodes every single week. My mother is an entrepreneur, and a lot of my friends are entrepreneurs, my female friends, and they are freaking kick-ass. So support your women entrepreneurs. Ladies and gents, enjoy. Hi, this is Moby from The Fire Show, and today I'm joined by Melinda Garvey.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing wonderful, thank you.
How has your week been?
My week has been a typical week in the life of a serial entrepreneur, I guess you could say. Just out of town for a few days and then trying to pack, a week's worth of work into 2 days and all kinds of other stuff. But it's always fun because it's always different and full of energy.
Yes.
I just wish I had as much energy as my life expects of me, right?
And you're involved in so many things. Austin Women, On the Dot, ATXMan, and how much more are you doing these days?
Well, that's about it. Besides raising a 10-year-old son and trying to be a good wife to my wonderful husband who also works with me in the business. So we work together and we try to actually, pretend we're a couple, maybe like once a month, but it's just, and, just try to actually have a little life. I won't even say the B word, the balance word, because it doesn't really exist in the life of an entrepreneur. But the greatest thing I think about everything that I do is I'm just so passionate about empowering women. And so all of that feeds into that. So even if this were just what I was doing on my free time and I had a job at Dell, and I would still be excited and passionate. So I feel really lucky that even though sometimes I feel like I haven't slept in a week, that, I get to do this and impact people's lives and hear their stories. And that's just, it's a gift.
It's all worth it.
Yes.
For you.
It's all worth it.
How?
That's what I'm saying now. No, I'm kidding. Okay, it's all worth it.
So let's go back to the beginning. Austin Woman started about 16 years ago. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, just a little over. We just had our 15th birthday in September.
Wow! Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. So, and hard to believe it. In many ways, it feels like it's been a long time, and then it also feels like it's just gone by in a flash. I think that's how we feel about our kids. Same thing. It's like, what happened? How did we get here? So, yeah, been quite a while.
What was the point where you said, I'm going to start a magazine dedicated to women in Austin?
Well, you want to know the true story?
Yes.
So the true story is I had moved to Austin because I came to visit a friend here and I just fell in love with it. And I kept staying. I was extending my plane ticket. And then finally I was like, I'm moving here. And so I thought, well, let's just see if I get a job. So applied for jobs, boom, boom. 30 days later, had a job, was moving here. One of those jobs is like this spectacular job on paper, right? They gave me an apartment, all this. Turns out it was the most horrific job, company, crazy people, one of those where I'm like, what happened? So fast forward 8 months into that job, I'd been here and I was out with some girlfriends, drinking some wine as you do, complaining about my job, going, what am I going to do? And I was just starting, what's next for me? And I was starting to sort of look around and figure this out. And I had a publishing background. I had been at a daily newspaper and then had been in an ad agency, worked on the US Air account before that. So kind of had been in this advertising marketing world. And, I was sort of just lamenting and having a pity party. And one of my friends says to me, hey, I just got back from Des Moines, Iowa. And I look at her, I was like, okay, this is my pity party, but we can talk about your trip to Des Moines, Iowa. And she said, there was this really cool magazine there called Des Moines Woman. And you know what? No one's talking about women in this town. And this was in 2002, early 2002, middle of that first tech boom. And it was just, the statesman, the business, men. You really couldn't find any content about women. And I have to tell you, I remember like it was yesterday. The hair stood up on the back of my neck. I mean, I'm sure my mouth dropped open. I'm holding my wine glass up going, and I knew in that moment, that's what I was supposed to do.
Just clicked.
I had never thought about starting my own business. I love the whole corporate thing, somebody else dealing with it, 401k. I didn't know any entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship wasn't a hip, sexy word like when I was going through school, like where everybody had to be an entrepreneur. It was what the crazy people did, which I think is probably still true today, but we make it sound prettier. Uh-huh. So I really had it wasn't about starting my own business. I just knew that was my calling. And it's not like I'd been in that space before. I just knew I could do it and it was my calling. And I have that like same strength of conviction even today. So, essentially the next morning I got up after a few Advil. I started writing a business plan and just really seeing like, is this possible? And 2 weeks later, I quit that horrible, crazy job that I had. And 7 months later, we launched the first issue of Austin Woman. And that was in September of 2002. So, I mean, it's sort of when people say, oh, so how do you plan for that? I'm like, in my case, and I know some people do, they come out and they know and they have this idea, but sometimes I think you have to be open to it just hitting you. And although I can't say that any of this has been easy, and hello, I have a print magazine in this day and age. I mean, let's all be real here, so it's not easy, but it's just the passion for what I'm doing and the lives that we've impacted, and just knowing that we have this really strong mission.
It drove you.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think of that? While you were talking and you said mission, I thought of this statement is when you have exceedingly high goals, like almost impossible. It's better to have those goals, because it motivates you every day to be like, okay, I'm going to do this, and it's difficult, it's impossible, but I'm going to do it. And the rest, if you have realistic goals, it's like, I can do this anytime.
That's right. And this is what going way back, it's probably dating me, Jim Collins, BHAG, wrote like From Good to Great, I think. But the big, hairy, audacious goals. And I've always loved that term, because I'm like, okay, that kind of describes like big, hairy, audacious goals. And I do believe that is what drives people, because you've got to reach for it. To your point, if you're not kind of scared out of your mind, and if you don't have that sick pit in your stomach at least a few times a day, I won't even say a few times a day, where you're just like, what am I doing? Your goals aren't big enough. You're not pushing yourself. It's supposed to be scary because entrepreneurship is supposed to be about making a difference, an impact. So, yeah. I'm scared all the time. Here to tell you.
I love that. Tell me about that moment when it clicked, and then you wake up the next day after a few Advil, and you start working on the business plan. And then, as humans are, we get some self-doubt. What kept you going? Saying, I've never done this before, but I'm going to keep going. This is my first publication. What in those 7 months kept you going?
Well, I think there are a couple things that kept me going. And again, I'm going old school here, but I really do believe in a business plan. And that can be a series of napkins that sort of outline your idea. That can be a formal business plan, whatever. But I will tell you that, when you wake up at 3 a.m. and you go, what am I thinking? Like, I just cashed out my 401k, all the money I had to put, like, what am I doing? I would often literally reference my business plan and go, nope, I thought through this. It's, I put the work into it. I understand. Sometimes just having that neutrality of like looking at the numbers and really like going back, because your head can do all kinds of crazy stuff for you. And the other thing I think is having a support network. Now, back in 2002 in Austin, entrepreneurship wasn't really a huge thing. It certainly wasn't as organized as it is now, and where people are getting together. And female entrepreneurship, like, hello, it just wasn't. There wasn't that network. So I just worked really hard at connecting and talking to people. And what I did find about Austin back then, and I think still holds true today, we just have to teach all these new people coming in that people are willing to help. I would ask, and they'd say, oh, wait, you need to be introduced to so-and-so. You need to have coffee with them. And my God, that person would take a coffee date. I lived for 11 years in Washington, D.C., and they're not going to meet with you. And I think that is really great about the culture here. So it's putting yourself out there, though, because it's not easy to ask. And I hadn't been in Austin that long. So these were pretty much, I was asking strangers to introduce me to other strangers, but it worked. And I got a lot of encouragement that way.
Having that support network of like-minded people who believe in your mission and be like, hey, I can help you with this part of what you do.
Exactly.
What part of that is also being afraid to fail in front of those people? That shame.
Yeah, I think that is a part of it. And I will say, when I look back, I didn't know. I think it's almost good that I hadn't thought about being in entrepreneurship and didn't know everything that it would take, because I was sort of just going blindly into this. So I didn't really experience that. But I've experienced that a lot recently with my new launch on the dot, because now I'm like, oh my gosh, all these people, now they know me, and I've had this magazine for 15 years and they're expecting the expectations. And really, it's in my own head where it's the fall feels so much further, right? If it doesn't work and I fail, and I have to overcome that all the time, because sometimes I think, oh, maybe I just shouldn't do this, or I have this other, I should just keep doing this. But I know why I'm doing what I'm doing, and I just have to keep reminding myself of that.
Talking about On the Dot, that's a daily podcast.
Yes. Microcast. I'm coining a new term.
Microcast?
Because it's only 4 minutes.
It's only 4 minutes? Yes, right. I saw that today.
That's right.
Nice. So the decision to start that, was that both that you wanted to branch off in a new medium, and also maybe the pressure that's on print media right now? How do you evolve as an entrepreneur and say, okay, this is working, but I see a trend in the industry which can harm my revenues down the line, so I'm going to add this new medium or channel for my content?
Yes. That was certainly a piece of it, although the impetus was sort of the very same as originally with Austin Woman. So what would happen is, over the years, I would go to different conferences, women's conferences, just meet other people. A lot of it was to fill my own cup. I wanted to know what other women were doing in other cities. And when I'm here, someone always wants something from me. And that's not in a bad way. That's just my job, right? But I would go to fill my own cup, and I'd meet all these great people, and I'd be talking to them about their cool businesses all over the country. And then they'd say, oh, well, what do you do? And I'd have my little copy, and I'd say, well, I have Austin Woman magazine. And their face would drop, and they'd say, oh my gosh, there's nothing like this in my city. How do I find relatable role models? How do I get my story told? And I was like, well, if you call me if you come to Austin, I'll help you out. And that just frustrated me for years. I thought, and there really aren't. Like, try to find another women's publication. I mean, you'll find maybe 3 or 4 across the entire country. They're, that are local, that are really, and that is our goal, is about empowering women, providing relatable role models so that women are inspired, so I can do that too. So fast forward, and the women's movement is starting to rev up. We've got a woman running for president, and this was sort of just needling at me, and I knew I wanted to do something, combined with print was starting, and we were sort of exploring all these digital options for Austin women. So I sort of started getting into all this, and I thought, I want to do something, but I want to do something outside of Austin because I feel like there's such a need. If you try to look up, there are a handful of podcasts, long form, that you can, if you really dig, you can find that sort of have that relatable role model. But pretty much everything out there is about Sheryl Sandberg, Marissa Mayer, Mary Barra, great women, don't get me wrong. But they're hard to relate to. It's really hard to find them. And I thought, I've been doing this here in Austin for 15 years. I can do this. And at first I thought nationwide, and it quickly became global. But about that time, I was introduced to The Skim. And what I loved about The Skim, which is a daily newsletter that tells you the headline news, and it's kind of story tells you the news, and it's super short. They give it to you on a silver platter. Most newsletters, you have to read 3 lines and then you have to click to read more, and it's a 6,
very annoying,
right? And it's a 6-page tome, and nobody wants to read pages and pages and pages and pages. So I love that. I go, okay, that's what I want to do. I want to do something short form, which is different from what we're doing with Austin Woman. So I was like, can I even do that? Can we write something that's original content, impactful? And then how it became Audible is I was trying to put on my mask. These are all my crazy. I'm telling you all my crazy stories about getting drunk and starting Austin Woman, and then putting on my mascara. Just as about, I'm kind of launching. I've got the whole thing. I know I'm doing a newsletter for On the Dot. We're working on all the voice and how we want to do it. And then one morning I'm trying to read on my phone, and I have to hold it 5 feet away because I can't see, and I'm trying to put on my mascara, and I'm hurrying, and I got a 10-year-old kid, and I've got all this stuff going on, and I thought, I wish someone would just read this to me. And I was like, that's it. Because I didn't want there to be any barrier to entry. If you're taking your kid to school, if you're exercising in the morning, if you're putting on your makeup, On the Dot is there for you. If you want to read it, you can read it if you're in a boring meeting, or you can listen to it, because I wanted every day that inspirational, and we have a woman to watch every single day from around the globe. And I wanted those relatable role models to be fully accessible, because my dream is that The Skim now has 6 million subscribers. And they're mostly millennial women. That's their core target. I thought, what if 6 million women, what if 1 million women even every single day heard a story about a relatable role model? What would the impact be? How would the conversation about the advancement for women change? And that's what we're all about, because a lack of access to relatable role models is the #1 issue facing the advancement of women. So, again, it's that same, I just knew I had to do it, and I figured out how to do it, and we did it in a different way. I know people are time starved, and I wanted to make it. And when we say it's 4 minutes, people are like, really? And people always ask me, why do you say 4? Why don't you just say less than 5? I said, because nobody believes when you say 5 minutes, I'll be there in 5.
No one believes that.
It's 15, 20, it could be a half hour. But when you say 4 minutes, it's 4 minutes. And so we're real specific about that.
This mission for the advancement of women, this has driven you all your life. Going back to what you mentioned when you were with your friends 16 years ago, and someone said, I went to Ohio and saw the magazine. What before that in your childhood or before that really made you, instilled that mission in you? Even when you hadn't started these businesses, where did this come from?
Well, it's interesting, because I think that somehow latently it was there, and it really, but it was nothing overt. I've always been encouraged by my parents. There was never you're a woman, you should be doing this or getting married. And I kind of am in that group where, I'm on that cusp of everybody went to college, you got married, you had your 2.2 kid, that was sort of, I was on the edge of that. But I never had that from my parent, so they always encouraged me to do anything. And I just always had this crazy strong work ethic. So any of the jobs that I had, I was always like, I'll do it. I was like the volunteer. People were like, what is this? And I just figure it out. So even though that doesn't translate to the woman thing, I think that just knowing that I could do anything and watching, I was advancing much further than other women within the companies I was in and faster. And so I think that combined, and then when it hit me, I knew it was obviously living in there, like, because I'm like, well, wait a minute, I have done this and I can do this and I can make a difference. So that knowing that I could, and then when the right sort of, oh, wow, I can empower women, I was like, I don't know, So it wasn't like something big happened. My mother wasn't a feminist. My mother was a wonderful stay-at-home mom, did a lot of great, volunteer work everywhere, gave back to the community. So I had a very traditional upbringing. So it's interesting, but something obviously was living in there.
Something was there.
Something was there, yeah.
You've met so many entrepreneurs. You've mentored them. You've learned from them. Do you think I don't know. That's why I'm asking. Do you think that there's a pattern in people who are really affected by something in their childhood? They have a passion for any kind of area, whether that's talking to people. I talk to a lot of people on this. Yeah. Do you feel like the entrepreneurs who are happiest or maybe are driven the most are driven by something which formed really early on, by a passion or an interest? Yes. Even?
Well, and I think it's a good question, because I actually, in my experience, the happiest entrepreneurs I know are mission-based, social impact, something that's meaningful on a personal level. And, this is anecdotal. I'm sure that there are some that are, wow, I created this widget that, whatever. And that's, it's not that you can't sort of love that, but it's different. Mm-hmm. Some things it's all about how big can I grow this and sell it and make money. And some of it is, yes, I want to make a lot of money, don't get me wrong, and that's what we're going for. But it's not at the expense of, I wouldn't be doing any of this just for the money. Mm-hmm. So I do find that the entrepreneurs, and I think that especially women, which is I think why women entrepreneurs can make such a significant impact, because not only do they go in, when they're all in. And they go for it and they do things, and it is part of their heart and their soul. They don't give up. Their success rates are higher, although they're not grown as much, because their businesses don't get as big often because they don't have access to the same kinds of things, and that's all of what we're working on. But I do think that women will impact our economy, and female entrepreneurs, because we give back, we pour it back into our economy, into the nonprofits, whatever. We're always into our communities and making that happen. So I think that there's just this sort of this holistic, when you talk about the happiness, it's like, gosh, when you're successful and then you can pour back in and make, then it's like that's the pinnacle for a woman. So
it's meaningful. I heard this recently. Don't chase happiness, chase meaning. Happiness is kind of a byproduct of meaningful experiences.
I agree. Yes.
Is it hard to stay happy as an entrepreneur? Like there's ups, there's huge ups, and then huge downs.
Right. And I think what people don't realize is that I can speak from my own experience, and then from some that I know, that it's like, just like I called my podcast a microcast. It's like these I could walk out the door after this podcast in 30 seconds and my phone, and I'm in the tank, and then, 15 minutes later something great happens. It is such a sharp up and down roller coaster. And it's very difficult. I think that there is a certain kind of personality that really can handle entrepreneurship, because you have got to be able to handle that and not, you got to be able to bounce from the bottom back up to the top within a 15-minute time range, literally. And so I think that if you're chasing happiness, to your point, if you feel like, oh gosh, I always have to be happy, or I always have to be, you'll constantly feel like you're failing. So I know that sometimes I'm going to be in the complete, I'm going to be like, I'm done. I'm not doing this. I assure you that will happen to me today. And I have this thing, people always say, how are you? And I always say, living the dream. And everyone's like, oh, I love that. And I said, here's the thing. I said, the day that I stop saying it, you'll know I'm actually living it, and I don't want to brag about it and rub it in your face, But it's like, that's just the thing. I'm like, I am. And I'm reminding myself, you know what? I'm living the dream. I am living my dream. But living in life isn't easy, right? In anything we do. And that's part of it. It's part of what makes us appreciate it, because the hard times, it's like anything in life. If you didn't go through the hard times, you wouldn't appreciate the good times.
Yeah. It's absolutely true. Really well said. Is that cool? One last thing. This is something I picked up from my friend Todd. He actually did this. 8:30 a.m. February 27th, 2019. Austin Woman Magazine tweeted for the first time. Do you remember what it is?
Oh my gosh, I have no idea, because somebody far smarter than me put that tweet out, because I don't think I even knew what Twitter was. But I would love to hear what it is. I'm a little afraid.
Yeah, do you want to read that?
Okay, yeah. We are all working on finalizing the March issue. Can't wait for it to hit the newsstands. Look how, and I think probably, I wonder if it had a picture attached. Could you attach pictures at that time in tweets?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know either. Because sometimes we take like our whole team like huddled over, the magazine, and we're, marking up pages, and those are fun times, and yeah.
So how can people, before we sign off, how can people reach you or find your work?
Well, people can sign up for On the Dot, and we are trying to get tons of signups and sharing it with women. It is free. You can go to onthedotwoman.com and sign up, and it will come right to your inbox at 6 a.m. on the dot, and you can read it or listen to it. And then all I ask is, if you love it, share it with everyone you know, because that's how we're going to spread the word. And of course, you can also visit us at Austin Woman. It's actually ATXwoman.com, and we've got all kinds of great daily content in addition to the regular monthly magazine. So we hope to see you there and at all of our events.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Melinda.
Thank you.
That was great. This is Moby from The Fire Show, from the startup studio at Galvanize. Thank you.